education is not only what it looks on the face of it, but is also a method or a toolkit to solve the problems, inclusivity, culture, all those problems. On that note, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the university today mentioned to the Minister that the university today stands at a student strength of 113,885. 113,885. This is the strength of this university in terms of current students that are on campus. On top of it, and that's what should be more concern for all of you, not only concern, but reason to celebrate for all of you, is that around 50% of this is the girl power. That is where we stand today. So we started with the girl power in terms of Cindy, and I have on this panel Sweta Saxena, who has worked with who's working with the United Nations, and who has previously worked with International Monetary Fund. Sweta, I want to begin with you, and because you come from India originally, you are working on spirituality and how education, spirituality, finance, microfinance, all those things go together. And of course, you have keen interest in education. I just want to have your thoughts on what are the challenges that you think that women are facing in terms of quality education and equal opportunities in the workforce. But more importantly, what I want is your thoughts on what we popularly say, that when a male child reads or studies, only he studies. But when a beti studies, then the whole family studies. So that way, the women education is by itself a notion of inclusivity. What do you think about it, and what are your thoughts about it? Particularly also about the challenges that women face in accessing quality education, particularly in a context of Indian and South Asian economic setting.
Challenges women face. I think my take on this will a little bit differ from other people as well, because it has been shaped by my own upbringing. I come from a large family with a lot of girls, just one boy in the family. And everybody thought that, growing up in a family with just girls and just one boy, my brother would have been given a lot of privileges. It just happened to be the opposite case. My parents have always believed in the power of girls. Even when they had daughters, they actually believed that all the daughters should be doctors, engineers. They had ambitions for their daughters as well. So I come from a family which didn't face this. Having said that, I can't say that every family would be as supportive of girls as my parents were. But coming back to the larger question Gagandeep was asking, what are the challenges girls face? A lot of the times, society can always be the biggest challenge, because we have societal norms which prevent girls from, I think, making use of their full potential. So sometimes it's the society that prevents them. What will society say? We also are always concerned about that. So those are some of the things. But coming to a larger part, I think in India, one of the biggest challenges for women to access education has been accessibility to schools. First of all, affordability. They could not afford, but even if they could afford to go to school, schools were not accessible. Given now that I work on gender equality, everything that the government spends on can be termed as gender equality. So I'll give you an example. When the current government came in power, I still remember in 2014, providing toilets was such a big thing, right? I mean, it's a part of our sustainable development goals from the United Nations. But everybody made fun. Part of the reason everybody made fun, because we all belong to middle class where we didn't have that problem. But think about so many of these families, people in villages, not having access to toilets. And this is the same thing that happens. A lot of girls stop going to schools when they hit puberties, again, exactly for the same reasons. They don't have hygienic facilities available, they don't have sanitation available. And so these are very basic things. To you and I, it might not seem too much, but at a larger level, it does inhibit girls from pursuing education. But bigger part is Having that distinction, I could be wrong. I've been away from India for a long time, and I do believe that things have changed. People do not put so much of a premium on a boy anymore. I think people do treat girls as equal to boys now, because that whole abhiyan of like from hum do hamare do to hum ek hamari ek, started off also changing the attitudes of people. So changing that really, really helps. Yeah. So we need to make those changes, and they're not easy, because they're all in our minds, and to change people's perceptions and their mindsets, it takes a long time. But nonetheless, we have to begin, and I think the journey has begun in India, at least I feel.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, that's true. The journey has already begun in India, and the journey is, India is proud of the girls like Sweta, those who are carrying the flag of India across the world to the biggest and the best organizations in the world. I'm glad that we are joined by Yogesh Kochar, who has been traveling across. He has experience across sectors and regions. I was surprised to read that he has given himself a name called Ignoramus, which comes from probably ignorant. But I think I was listening to him over lunch and slightly before, and I think you should rather be called Geniusamus, because you are quite a genius, having knowledge across the fields. Thank you very much for being here. And what do you think particularly? Because I think there are some stereotypes also, Yogeshi. For example, one stereotype which Sweta was mentioning, that this is now getting shattered, the stereotype of saying that, okay, women are an underprivileged lot or something like that. Today, the girls are actually the bright marks in our world. Those bright dots are the women. And you have seen the North American system and also the global system. How do you think, what are the lessons that India can draw from these societies in terms of inclusivity, innovation, employment, and those opportunities for women?
I'll keep this brief, thank you. I'll keep this brief. I don't think India has a lesson in all this for anybody at large. I think all the women in this hall, even if 10% of them took this away from me, our job would be done. Vimla Patil used to be the editor-in-chief of the Femina, which is a beautiful magazine which continues to be so even today. She wrote some 30 years, some 27, 28 years ago. The thought just came back to me as we are sitting now. So she said, this is the time when America had the women were on the street, they were burning bras and their underwear, and they're saying women equality, and she says all this is nonsense. Why? Because women are the ones that produce the world. It is because of a very narrow media political narrative that women were suddenly made to feel that they were less than the men, is why they had to even raise their voice. On the contrary, even if they had not raised their voice and they had continued doing whatever it is that they're doing, the world would have not been any different from how it is today to how it was back then. Correct? Because you're the one that actually produced the world. Right? That's what she said. There are some qualities in women that are unimaginable, that are irreplaceable, that cannot be replicated in men. So I don't see this entire debate of being between men and women. Even if you look at Mahabharata, Arjuna, when he was given his Diksha by Lord Krishna, he had to tell him that you'd have to become an Ardhanarishwar. You'd have to become half man, half woman. Up until such time as you're not that, you can't even win a war. So I don't think there's a message in this for anybody else other than if there is any media out here, and Outlook is certainly here. Outlook must, and I'm sure Outlook does this regularly, is why they picked on a subject which is as important as this. So I think women have a bright role to play. They don't have to be flustered, or they don't have to feel less just because there's a narrative evolving around them. I am who I am, and nobody takes it away from me. I think that's the analysis that I have, and we shouldn't be bothered about whatever it is that the media has to say. Well, narratives will happen. As I was saying also on the lunch table, the unfortunate part is that we've only got about 120 degrees aperture for our vision. Look how God created each one of us equally. जो भी आप देखते हैं, it is an exact aperture of 120 degrees. Now 360 degrees forms a circle, which means that any given point in time, anything that you're looking at is only 1/3 of the entire world. 2/3 is always either around you or behind you. And the moment you tend to get locked within that 1/3 perspective of how you look at world is when you've gone ahead and locked yourself in a cage, and that's your opinion. Yeah. So I don't think opinions work very much. Don't get opinionated. Just break, just shatter these opinions. There are enough examples of women that have gone ahead and broken the glass ceiling and just gone through the roof like rockets, etc. I think that's what women need to understand, and more so, we'll talk about this in the AI context as to what are the opportunities that exist for them.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very interestingly said, and I will come back to you later, but I want you to, later on in the second round, I want you to carry forward what Ashwin was mentioning, that these are the keywords which are dying. In fact, I particularly want to hear from you and Amit about it, that how do you think, for example, I have seen people talking a lot about machine learning nowadays, and people who are starting to do research on machine learning and its applications, and Ashwin just mentioned, I hope you all heard, that he said that the topmost declining word, which is declining in terms of its relevance or in terms of whatever applications, etc., is machine learning. So in that perspective, Amit, who's a chartered accountant, let me introduce you to him, or him to you actually. He's a chartered accountant by profession, and he specializes in things like finance, process, business research consulting, business risk consulting, corporate governance. He has been a partner with very many big organizations, top big 4 organizations. And in addition to that, he has keen interest in education. Amit, what I'm thinking and what I think that you can bring on the table is particularly, how relevant do you think finance is becoming? This round is on women, because we have this theme of this discussion is also crossing borders, transforming lives, new frontier of education. So I would come back to some other things like crossing borders and transforming lives, but one important thing is that how far do you think finance plays a role in empowering women, and what are your thoughts on the education sector in India? Do you think it is playing some key role? Has it started? What are your thoughts? What are your inputs? We as a university would also like to listen from the corporate world. What are your thoughts on empowering women through career-centric education, through entrepreneurship-centric education, and how far do you think Indian education institutions are going in that direction?
Before I answer that, thanks for having me here, guys. I think fundamentally, despite being a chartered accountant, which I heard twice today, my finances are managed by my wife. She is far better at numbers than me.
Of course. You don't have an option.
And my daughters are even better. And they are all of 11. So the money that I carry in my pocket is withdrawn from the bank by my wife, given to me, and I carry it. I hardly ever get to use it. That's the reality. Now, coming to the question that Gagan asked, I think fundamentally in the Indian education system, and I'll do a bit of sidestep. What happens is today as a corporate, when you look to hire people, and we do hire people even from GGS IPU. In fact, one of the recent partners that we made is a graduate of this university who passed out, I think, back in 2002. So courses need to be nimble and agile to be able to be working on the job. See, thing is, my interest in education came up literally about 18 years back, when in one of the previous organizations, I was a manager and I had to train people. Thing is, when you pass out of colleges, you do your degrees, you have done theoretical study. And which is what I and Yogesh were discussing during lunchtime. Our education system is more around theory, not around practical situations. If you look at it, let's say take for example any kind of process. Bottom line is, when you go and buy from market, you're running a process at a smaller scale. When you're in an organization in a large corporate house, you're doing it at a much larger scale. You're putting some method to the madness. Back of the mind, it has to be there. But realistically, how do you apply it? That has to come into education itself. Because when you talk through on case studies, you discuss, deliberate, apply logic to it, it makes it more, I would say, workable. In fact, you'll be surprised. We work with at least, I think, 4 different colleges in India where courses are tailor-made to our requirement because we need those specific skill sets. And there are firms within the country because we are now moving from a manufacturing setup to a services setup. There are different firms in the country who are tying up with different colleges and universities to get tailor-made courses. And unless you do that, you can't be ready with what you're supposed to do. The other thing, and this is more of what is a new thing coming up, education is also now becoming expensive. So you got to look at outcomes as well. Just because X is doing so-and-so course doesn't mean that Y also gets into it. And that cannot be a reason for doing a course. Unless you have a value for it, you can't, and you don't really see any outcome out of it, don't do that course. I hope I have addressed your...
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, in fact. Okay, I think we should make a little move now towards transforming lives and crossing borders. I'll start with an example, a brief example. We have just launched a new program called Master of Science. We have collaborated with the Polish University, AGH University of Krakow. This Master of Science program is, the specialization is digital production for sustainable manufacturing. Now, digital production, sustainable manufacturing, and Master of Science. At the same time, you talked about the expense in education and how it is getting costlier and costlier. The Polish government said, okay, we would not charge a penny from the Indian students. So the student doesn't need to pay any Polish fee. He just pays, she or he just pays the Indian fee of this university and goes. That's how the governments are spending on education, particularly in Europe, because in times of Trumponomics, and I'm sure you know what I mean, the crisis between Europe and North America on one hand, and the crisis of students coming from China or those parts of the world is going to loom larger. And then, like Cindy was mentioning, in the North American setups, the number of Indian students is increasing. I know I was part of North American education system somewhere in 2007, and I saw the number of Chinese students, which was at least 5 times that of Indian students. And now I'm aware it is just 2 times maybe, or even lesser. How do you see this cross-border, also geopolity and all those things which I have not said, but you have understood, I'm sure. How do you see these things impacting the masses of India, those who seek education abroad, those who seek jobs abroad?
Okay, so here, I was reading analytic this morning, and this is a QS published thing.
Yes, skills report.
In Europe, Indian students are roughly half of what goes to US and North America rather. In North America, on an average, about 20 to 25% students are from India. So that's a lot which is happening there. And pretty much equal or little higher number is coming from China. In Europe, the bigger issue which is happening is the characteristic of no kids families. So husband and wife working and don't have kids. Now this is impacting their whole ecosystem as well. And which is where countries like Poland, Finland, Norway are encouraging students to come from India. This is also a pretty much big business as well. If you look at North America, India gave out, Indian students generated roughly around $11.8 billion worth of economy last year. In Europe, it was a minuscule number. So they are also looking at increasing their economy, so to say, using this. And I think finally, bottom line is, we have to obviously encourage. We have to do those tie-ups, pick up those strands. And I think IP University has done very well in tying up with the Polish University.
Yeah.
Because I don't think so far any of the Indian universities have done this kind of tie-up. A lot of South Asian universities have done it. They have tied up with European businesses, but not in India so far.
Thank you.
I'd like
Thank
to,
you.
can I
But
add to that?
I'll just throw one more thing to you. You please continue this discussion and continue your reflections. But I throw one more thing to you, which is interdisciplinarity. How do you think interdisciplinarity is relevant, or where we are lacking, or where we need to pull our socks, or where do you think we have to contribute? We are already very proactive on the interdisciplinarity. Your thoughts on that in the light of the national education policy also. So I'm throwing
Yes,
a lot of things to you.
Right, thank you. So, one I'd like to focus on, firstly, the interdisciplinary relationship or the differences between how the Chinese student perceive things and how we perceive things. Interestingly, I was speaking to Dr. Bhaker also a while ago, and this comes to me. The very foundational models of education have to change, okay? And I'm saying this slowly only for impact.
Yes.
For most of these boys and girls that are studying here, 80% of what you're studying here is going to become irrelevant in the next 1 year's time. It's going to become irrelevant in the next 1 year's time. Now I'll come to the interdisciplinary approach. Look at the Chinese students, sir. Chinese have a language which is idiomatic. They have an idiom. That idiom becomes a character, and they're able to convey a sentence in a single character, idiomatic. English, on the contrary, the different language which is alphabetic, right? You have alphabets from A to Z. That's what we study, right? A to Z. Yes or no, boys and girls? Yeah, A to Z. Then we told now you got to prepare a ball, so a ball has to go from B to A and then got to come back to L and then to an L. Okay, you disturbed my A to Z thought. Now you ask me to prepare a ball. Good. So from alphabet to a word to a sentence, and the sentence is what is called an idiom. You understand? Look at the way comprehension happens in the Indian system or in the English system of thought. Comprehension happens through a word from an alphabet to a word, from a word to an idiom, and from an idiom to a character. That's how you image things. Those people are way ahead of us. And one must salute them and their ingenuity in terms of having developed whatever it is that they've developed. That is foundational. And why am I even talking about it? Why I'm talking about it today is this, that AI has gone ahead and put your entire education system in a completely warped situation when none of all this that is being taught today in the universities and colleges is going to be relevant in about a year's time, right? So in terms of the perspective, in terms of the orientation of students, I think that's what needs to be dwelled upon more so in the schools, even less so in the colleges. But there's no time to lose even for colleges today. We can't go finger pointing and say, hey, the school didn't teach them this way, so we inherited this, and that's why we'll have to teach them a certain way. The colleges and the universities have an equal responsibility into correcting this entire foundational mechanics on how teaching and learning ought to happen. How do we register things in our mind is what needs to be taught to them foundationally, because the more that a professor or a teacher goes onto the blackboard or on a computer screen and is trying to teach you the same thing over and over and over and over again, he's going to do that rat to a hamster death. You know, the rats that run in the hamster, we've all run that hamster and we've run the length of that hamster, we're all going to be dead and gone. So I think orientation-wise, and if I twisted your question a little bit, what I'm saying is this, that we have to take cognizance of the fact that in order to become a Vishwa Guru, we have to realize that we're not going to become a Vishwa Guru by beating our chests about it, but by recognizing that the entire economy of the country today is about $3.5 trillion, which is the valuation of one NVIDIA. And we want to become Vishwa Gurus? Very good, congratulations to us. But hey, we need to go beyond this entire paradigm of just beating our chest, thumping our chest and saying, yeah, we've done it, we are there and we are here. Unfortunately, we are also burdened by our history. We've produced some great leaders in the history. Vivekananda ji was one, Ramakrishna Paramahansa ji was one. Those are people that are in the rear view mirror, ladies and boys, ladies and gentlemen. Now when you're crossing the road, you got to take a look at them, sure, but you can't keep them up front, personal to the left and to the right of yourself, because otherwise you'll not be able to see through the screen. So that's what, so my basic premise here is this, that the point that I'm trying to stress or talk about is this, that we need to create the very basic foundational mechanics of how education ought to be dispensed. I think that will bring about the pertinent change that we hope to see, because if we don't see that change, 60% of our boys and girls won't have a job in the next 2 years' time. I'm sorry to, say this. This is not dystopian future that I'm painting, but I'm warning all of us that we need to pull our socks up. So students, as much as teachers, have a responsibility towards each other to consult with each other. Gone are the days when there's a difference between the teacher that taught and the student that learned. Today, the student knows as much or perhaps more than what the teacher teaches in the classroom, right? And that's why he's lost interest or she's lost interest in the classroom. So I think we've got to realize that the world has come to a completely different place. Several years ago, some guy wrote the world is flat, right?
Yes.
The world is flat was written. So this is the next flattening of the world, where the opportunities are equal for men and women. Women more so because of a few other things that we'll discuss about my next round when you come back to me again. But all I want to say is that there's a very, once again, and at the cost of sounding pedantic, repeating myself over and over again and sounding breathless, is this, that we need to look at the way education is dispensed. That way is incorrect, that way is old, that way is dead. And with that, our professors will be dead if they don't change, and our students will definitely be dead if they don't start looking at better ways to equip themselves and understanding how should they be learning and how should teaching be dispensed. As a matter of fact, we've just recently concluded writing a book on AI, which we should be releasing sometime in the month of February, which talks about how is it that teaching and learning ought to be dispensed and accepted and adopted in the institutions of tomorrow.
Thank you very much. I think I'll just say one more thing in addition to what Yogesh was mentioning, that one is that the teacher is teaching the students, but now the time has come when the student has a responsibility towards the teachers. And from that perspective, you all have a responsibility. To keep your teacher updated is also your responsibility. So the kind of questions that you would ask in the class, the kind of, the voice is a very important thing these days. And you will have to put your voice together to raise the points to the teacher, okay? And then the teacher will be on his or her toes and then updated and delivering you what you actually need to be delivered rather than what he has or she has got to deliver. Well, moderating a panel is a very difficult thing, trust me. And it is even more difficult when the panel is as intelligent as this lady and these gentlemen are, because then all your papers go waste. You cannot continue from the papers, from the notes that you prepared. So I don't think I can continue with the notes that I have. I'm inclined to, in fact, come back to Sweta about, I'm inclined to ask you two different things. You can choose which one you want to answer now and which one in the next round. One is that, on one hand, we are talking about interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity. Yogesh rightly mentioned that we need to learn a lot from the transdisciplinarity, the way it is happening in Europe, North America, and the West. But if you look at our Nalandas, if you look at the ancient Gurukul systems, the Indian knowledge systems, from that perspective, I do not see any society, I do not see any segment of the society worldwide as diverse, as versatile as the Indian or the South Asian perspective, for that matter. My research in the last 6-7 years has borrowed more from Gandhi, has borrowed more from Swami Vivekananda, has borrowed more from Dalai Lama, has borrowed more from Buddha, Nanak, all those, Gita, than probably from any economic or financial or scientific books. So from that perspective, the interdisciplinarity, we will have to also view it bottoms up, because where we are as an Indian society, as a South Asian society, we have a lot to give to the world. That's one question. I think I'll ask only this and then I'll come back to you with the second part, lest we miss some part of this, Sweta.
So I'll give you an example, my personal example. I've been a trained economist. So ever since I got out of high school, all that I did was economics until I did my PhD. And my very first job was an academic job. And it was in a public policy school, where I had my colleagues who were political scientists, anthropologists, all sorts of fields, right? And I kind of, as an economist, as a trained economist, you're taught to kind of look down upon other social sciences. And I never thought very highly of them. And I never collaborated and did any work with them. Having said that, when I look back on my entire career, those 7 years were the lost years of my working life, because I felt that I could have gained so much by actually collaborating with them, understanding how even economics works, by understanding the sociology, the anthropology, and everything, and political science, right? So interdisciplinarity is very important. So I just wanted to say that, just to actually emphasize what Yogesh had already started saying. Coming back to, I think, it's a little bit, can I go a little bit philosophical in
Yes,
terms
but
of...
just be mindful of the time. But
yeah,
everything else okay.
just, I'll be very mindful of the time.
You cannot trust that, because we may have to adapt. But maybe 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, no, just as, when we're thinking of education and what, I'm not going to disagree with Yogesh when he's basically saying that the kind of education system we have, you're probably not going to find a job in a couple of years. Because I somehow have been thinking about it a lot. When we are training our students, what are we training them for? What kind of jobs? Because we really do not know what kind of jobs are going to exist in the next 5 years. Forget about the next 20 years, 15 years. A kid entering school at the age of 5, he's going to retire in 60 years' time, right? He's going to be in the job market another 15, give it another 15, 20 years. Do we really know what kind of jobs? So I think we need to really rethink the education system. What are we preparing kids for? Kids for there's some basic things they need to learn, but they also need to learn how to keep learning. Okay? You need to learn how to learn. Because after a certain point in time, everybody forgets how we can learn. So that's one thing we have to teach, and it is only going to come through creativity. And creativity means let people be who they want to be. I think in India we are at this point where we are not asking kids to be engineers and doctors. When I grew up, I didn't have any option but to take science in high school, because if you're a good student, that's what you're supposed to do. But I don't see that kind of a pressure anymore. So I think we really need to rethink the system. Now, how we rethink and where we are going to go is another question. And if we get the time, we'll come back to it. But I'll leave it at that for now.
I'll just add to it.
Yes.
Before we get into the next round. See, what happens is, despite all that we think about of education system, I think one thing is, and I'm a big fond believer of Indian Jugaad. I don't mind saying it, because realistically, all of us are intelligent. All of us have survival instinct. And believe me, in my career of last 25 years, my work title has always been that internal controls, corporate governance, and all of that. But then the underlying work has evolved. That has only come up because of upskilling. You keep on reskilling and upskilling yourself. Even when I hire somebody, and I've got a variety of kids doing work for me. It ranges from a standard plain vanilla chartered accountant to engineer and engineers of all types. I've got chemical engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, computers engineers. I also have lawyers and MBAs. And I also have psychoanalysts and psychology guys. Now, that's a variety. People do develop themselves. I also have a couple of guys from your college. So, people who have done business analytics diploma. Now, people do change themselves. And realistically, in my view, I don't go by the thought of hiring somebody when I'm hiring, that he has to have a certain degree.
Sweta, so I will now come back to each one of you for one final comment, because the Honorable Chairman is already here. I'll come to you for one final comment, particularly to, first of all, to Yogeshi. My students are a little scared. Firstly, Ashwin scared them. Then you scared them. Then we all scared them that they will not get jobs because education has to evolve And now my Honorable Vice Chancellor is also here. So we would all like to hear from you, what is the future in terms of jobs? What do you think universities need to teach? You are saying it in the presence of Professor Sitaram, who is probably one of the most dynamic chairpersons of the AICTE that we have seen in recent times. So since Sir is also here and our students are here, please get us out of this scare and fear and guide us. What do you think are the jobs or the sectors where we are going to get the jobs? What are the lessons for the universities? What are the lessons for the students? And also what are the lessons for the teachers?
You know, Professor Gagan, you've put the headlights into the eyes of the hare and you want to shoot me. I can't be saying what I was saying 5 minutes earlier, and I was trying to paint a very grim picture of what's going to happen ahead. But we've got some eminent educationists, and I have immense amount of respect for Professor Sitaram, who it's been an honor and a privilege for me to co-author a book with him on artificial intelligence and how it is going to change the entire landscape of the world in the coming few years. So one is, scared. So if I scared you, my objective is just to tell you this, that, there are two ways of looking at ignorance, okay? One is to say that I don't know. The second is to say that I don't even know if I don't know. I think most of us operate in that second stage of sleep, where all of us are actually asleep with our eyes wide open. My objective of scaring you all is not to tell you that it's going to be a grim picture ahead, but it's basically to tell you, hey guys, even though you got your eyes open, please wake up for once and acknowledge the fact that AI is upon us. All the jobs that currently humanity is doing are going to be replaced. Just to give you a sense of statistics, the entire economy of this country is about $4 trillion. There is one NVIDIA which is about $4 trillion in America. Yesterday, for some of you that heard the speeches at the White House, now SoftBank is looking at releasing $500 billion worth of funding to build data centers. Most of you guys that are using your Facebooks and your Twitters, etc., should know that this is exactly how America has trained you. What does that mean? It means that your neural synapses have been trained. There is a neural switching happening in your mind every 2 seconds. You cannot even understand what is being spoken to you by me, let alone by your professor. That's a different story altogether. So you got to realize, where is it that you suddenly find yourselves? It is so dense that it is impossible for us to extricate you from the social media and bring you back into yourself to say, hey, where am I? Because most of us are sleepwalking in this daze, gaze, and haze, and we think that, the world is going to, or our future is going to find us. That's not going to happen till such time as you do not change your habits. The neural switching, once again, I'm telling you, is taking away your IQ, because IQ is all about pattern recognition, and the short video that you watch have no pattern. That's trained your mind. So your mind has no pattern, which means you have no IQ, and I'm sorry to be using harsh words here. Basically, just to provoke you into thinking, you also have lost your EQ to emojis or emoticons, because those are the ones that replace your emotions. And when that happens, your entire endocrinal system starts malfunctioning or dysfunctioning. Then you go on to life support system, because the enzymes that get generated out of love don't get generated out of circulating a heart. Or the enzyme that generate because of grief don't get generated by merely writing RIP and forgetting about it in the next 1 minute. So my objective was really not to scare you, but is basically just to give you a sense of how you should just wake up in this entire state of woke that we all are in.
Yeah, on a lighter note, I use the term scare, but you know that I am actually thanking you for raising the voice and making us rise to the occasion, because that's very important. If we are not scared at this juncture, maybe the future will scare us. You are saving us from the scare of the future. Amit, quickly, 30 seconds, your thoughts.
I think education system obviously needs to evolve to meet up the economic requirements. We are aiming to be a $3 trillion economy. We need to be geared to work towards it. Now, obviously, education system needs to do, but I think as students also need to take those steps to ensure that life is not spent only on social media, but is also meaningful use of laptops, iPads, and mobiles.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. You have only taken 20. But Sweta, my last question, and from the panel also, you are the last speaker. But I have one question which I thought I'll ask you when probably our learned leaders are also here. They are all here now. You have worked with IMF. You are working with United Nations. What is the direction of funding that you think how India can attract more funding in terms of building our infrastructure, particularly the human infrastructure, and other important things that India needs to build? You know that. We are building companies, we are building entrepreneurs, everything. But what is it that we are missing in terms of attracting the IMFs of the world, the United Nations of the world, to help us build what we need to build for the future? Your final thoughts.
Thanks. Just wanted to say that, if you're thinking of any kind of very specific project related funding, that normally is the World Bank does that. IMF doesn't do that. IMF is only for balance of payment, stability, as it was always given us the money for. Having said that, I think if you really want to attract foreign investors, macroeconomy, a strong macroeconomy helps attract them, which is where we get into this circle, right? A stronger economy attracts them, and once you attract them, the economy becomes stronger. So governance, good governance, that's something everybody always looks forward to, good institutions. And so I think right now India is in a good position to do that, given the governance has been pretty good actually, and macroeconomy, it's the shining light in the entire world for now. So I think the future is bright, notwithstanding all the scare that Yogesh has given, but I think it is time to wake up. I do completely agree with him, and I think it's really time for us to rethink about what the future holds for us. Also, and how we prepare ourselves for that future. So
thank you very much, and this was a fantastic panel. Sir, thank you very much, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Verma. You have always been a guiding light for us in terms of your leadership, and Professor Sitaram, thank you for being here. In fact, we were listening to you last week in that Udyamotsav, because we sent some 19 startups to that Udyamotsav. So that way we are all guided by the lights that you carry.